I've got a lot of questions here. Some of them are repetitive. I'm trying to find something different. Here's one, and this is for Mrs. Crane. With Measure M funding now being used for the ARTIC Transportation Center, is that
That's
right?
correct.
Where do you propose we find funding for street repair for areas outside the resort?
Well, I think that the resort throws off an awful lot of money, as was mentioned, 51–52% of the general fund comes from there. I think that we need to look at taking 1 to 2% of our TOT. All the TOT, the bed tax in the city, goes into the general fund, so it's used for police and fire, about 68%.
Could you speak more directly into your mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I start again?
Yes,
Thank
since I
you.
stopped you.
I forgot the question.
The question is, with Measure M funding for now being used for the ARTIC Transportation Center, where do you propose we find funding for street repair for areas outside the resort?
I think there are many opportunities to find funding for areas outside the resort. Measure M has gone to ARTIC, but 51 to 2% of the resort area goes into the general fund. And I've always been an advocate. All the bed tax, the TOT from the resort area and other hotels in the area go into the general fund, which supports police and fire to the tune of about 68% of the general fund. I would like to see a minimum of 1% of the TOT that the city collects earmarked for neighborhood revitalization, neighborhood repairs, curbs, gutters, tree trimming, things like that. Quality of life issues for our residents. It's wonderful to have a resort. It's wonderful to have millions of tourists come every year. But wouldn't it be nice if our city was as pretty as it was a few years ago? The city is looking tired, particularly on this side of the city. And we need to find a revenue source. So minimum of 1% of the TOT needs to be recycled into the neighborhoods.
Mr. Brandon?
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, with Measure M funding now being used for the ARTIC Transportation Center, where do you propose we find funding for street repair for areas outside the resort?
Yes, a lot of Measure M funding was used not only to build ARTIC, but also to handle the revised leasing and purchase agreement, and it needed to be done to ensure that this great project comes to fruition. With regard to finding other funding, we need to be creative, and we have been doing that in Anaheim. I'm very proud as a Public Utilities Board member that every single time we underground something out here in West Anaheim, we do it in conjunction with Public Works, so that we cull the funds and we create that efficiency. We need to do more things like that as we underground, as we expand our streets and roads, as we put in medians. Use all these different sources of money, whether it be federal or state, and use them together for multi-use projects, as we have done with undergrounding. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
TOT would be a good source of funding. We'll also have to look for other options from maybe the state and federal government. Just for the matter of record, I was opposed to ARTIC. I think it was a waste of taxpayer money. We could have used the funds to build a smaller system, existing system with commuter rail using Metrolink and Amtrak. This is going to be pretty much, we don't even know if high-speed rail is going to come here to Anaheim. So.
Okay, Mr. Reyes.
Well, there's a lot of talk about TOT tonight, and I'm glad because I've been outspoken to the use of, or the potential use of TOT, the $158 million subsidy to one hotelier. When we as a city every quarter, once that hotel gets built, are cutting a check for $2.5 million every quarter, that's going to be money that sitting in the dais, I'm going to say, wow, we could have used that money for something else. It goes against free market, it goes against capitalism. It should go against the ideology of most of the people sitting on the council. So, yeah, I agree with Lucille that we could use some of that TOT for other uses. Thank you.
Mr. Tijoux?
Would you read your question again?
Yes,
I think we got off track.
I would like an explanation for my benefit of what TOT stands for.
Transit
Occupancy
occupancy tax.
tax.
Say it again.
Transit occupancy tax.
Transit occupancy tax.
That's the tax that's set on hotel. It's a bed tax. Bed tax.
Thank you for that. Okay, so here's the question again. With Measure M funding now being used for the Arctic Transportation Center, where do you propose we find funding for street repair for areas outside the resort?
But the only source of funding was our TOT tax, and our current council gave it away. We got $158 million that we should have had for roads that's gone forever. It should have never happened. So where do we find it? It's going to have to tighten up the purse strings. I don't know. There's no source unless we get, my problem with the TOT tax and this funding is once that new hotel gets built, I'll guarantee you the other hotels are going to sue and not want to pay. We're going to lose all our TOT taxes, period. We're going to be in deep doo-doo. And that was wrong. It's our children who are going to suffer.
Mrs. Linder, how do you feel about this question?
Well, the top tax, bed tax, are supposed to stay supposedly in the resort area to expand it and to improve it. The Measure M was supposed to go to our roads and other transportation. I agree that ARTIC, they jumped the gun on it. They should have held off on it until they get everything else lined up, ready to go into it. Otherwise, we're going to have a building that's fairly empty. Our roads have to be repaired. They can't just sit and go into further disrepair. There's a lot of things the city council has voted on of late where they spent maybe way too much money and didn't consider the entire picture, only looking at one phase of it, at the resort only. They need to look at the entire city.
And finally, Mr. Lodge?
The question goes back to the Measure M funding. It wasn't one or the other. If ARTIC wasn't built, that money was going to go directly to roads within Anaheim. That's not where this project is. This project was approved by OCTA and using some of that money to build ARTIC. So I think we're kind of getting off on the wrong path here. It's not one or the other. If we didn't build ARTIC, then we're going to get the money for this. That has to come separately to particular road programs and highway repair. It also, the TOT issue wasn't part of this question, but it was talked about, so I will too. That hotel would not be built if that incentive wasn't in place. So there is no money that we're giving away if the hotel is not built. In order to provide a very long stream, a long consistent stream of tax revenue from those hotels, this deal was made. And after that, those years end, 100% of that TOT will return to the city.
All right, thank you. And before we continue any further, it's 20 minutes after 8. Mrs. Wallace, would you give me some idea how much longer you want the forum to continue?
We're supposed to be done by 8:30.
By 8:30, that's what I was thinking, so we better cut these back. We have lots and lots of questions up here, and it might be possible for you to talk to the candidates afterwards.
We have to be out of here by 9.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Okay.
we possibly could go just a little bit, maybe 20 to 9. But we have to be out of here by 9.
Okay, well, we'll continue for